For Clemson Sports Talk with... It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set! Just call me Swanee.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond. Listening to us on spectacular radio stations like Fox, Sports Radio 1400 the Midlands around the world, on the iHeartRadio app, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. 803-450-0086 text line, phone line. Be a part of the program anytime, any place, anywhere. And I literally mean that. Wherever you are, we are there for you. 803-450-0086. A couple of days ago, we had a little retrospective where we played it back, an interview with the Carrie Turbay. And then we also had one with former Clemson Tiger Terrell Mcintyre, who's currently on the staff in Tiger Town. Well, I can't help but think of those teams and think about guys like Tom Wyman. And we were fortunate enough nearly 2 years ago to sit down with Tom Wyman to talk about his time in Tiger Town, and thought we'd bring that to you here in the opening segment of Hour 1 on a Friday afternoon. Tom Wyman joining the program. Tom, welcome in. Hope you're doing good.
I'm doing great, Lawton. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, look, it's such unique times, and I'm trying to do some storytelling here, and our listeners know that. And so, I want to get to your time at Clemson, because you guys are so exciting, as we both went in there in 1995 as freshmen. But when you look back at Tom Wyman's, life in sports, when did things really begin for you, or what are some of your earliest memories?
Well, I was the youngest brother of three, so I had older brothers who were playing sports. So for me, it started real early. It was just kind of part of our family dynamic. And, I was tall, so that helped with sports as well. So, I came out of the chute early. As soon as I could play on a 10-foot goal, I was playing with older kids. So probably second, third grade, I was, starting to think about, I knew it was a lot of fun, but I guess I was probably thinking about, being a good athlete and at least making it a big part of our life. And, I think having older brothers is for anybody who's got older brothers who are athletic, certainly makes it a lot easier.
Did you have somebody else in your family that was tall? I mean, you mentioned how you were tall, you were little, and obviously nearly 7 feet tall. I mean, is that genetics? Is there somebody else in your family that's really, really tall in the past?
My mom's tall. I mean, she's not super tall. I mean, she's probably 5'9", 5'10". Her dad, my grandfather, was a tall dude, and he actually was a swimmer at Clemson for a little while. He was probably 6'5", 6'6", so pretty tall for his age. So certainly was in there, but my older brothers topped out at about 6'3", 6'4". They're tall, but they're not, 6'10".
Yeah, and I'm sure there are difficulties living with that height and cars and all kind of things, and we might get into that. But so there you are. You're younger. Your older brothers are kind of challenging you a little bit. They're pushing you. Were you better at one sport than the other initially? I mean, did you play all three major sports, or kind of how did you get into these sports that you were playing back then?
No, I was basketball and baseball forever, so never really did anything else. And where I grew up in East Cobb, Georgia, it's a big baseball world. So, East Marietta was a Little League organization that won the entire World Series in 1983, and that was when I was 6 or 7 years old. So, baseball was a big deal when we were growing up. Everybody played. Certainly played basketball. because I was tall. So I was always just basketball and baseball, man. Played all the way through up until my senior year in high school.
Tom Wyman, former Clemson Tiger center, hanging out with us. And you mentioned growing up in Marietta. I'm from a small town in South Carolina where there's one high school, and you knew all the local town heroes, etc. Do you remember, in fifth, sixth, seventh grade, guys that you looked up to playing sports that you thought, oh man, one day if I could just be, this guy?
I went to I remember going to a couple of the high school basketball games and, thinking that was a pretty big deal, but I was more of a college and pro. I started watching Georgia Tech basketball at a pretty early age. And then I was Atlanta Braves. I was just hooked. My parents tell stories about how the whole family was going out to dinner and then go to a movie, and I'd be like, no way, I'm staying home to watch the Braves game, just a regular season game. And I was like 7 years old. But
they weren't great back then, Tom. They weren't the best.
And they weren't the best. It didn't matter to me. I had to memorize everybody's batting stance. It had to be everybody's number. And, I was a huge Braves fan. And then, watched Georgia Tech basketball when I was little, because I'm, in the Atlanta area.
Yeah.
Certainly had some ties to Clemson because my grandfather and my uncles went there. So was certainly tied to Clemson a little bit too, even at a young age. And those are the guys I looked up to. Dominique Wilkins for the Hawks was kind of my hero. And, loved watching as I got older, the Georgia Tech era with Kenny Anderson and Brian Oliver and Dennis Scott. When they made their run, I think I was probably in middle school or high school. I guess that was probably middle school. So those were really the teams, the Hawks, the Braves, and Georgia Tech basketball, that were kind of the folks that I watched.
Tom Wyman with us here on Clemson Sports Talk, the show that shakes the Southland. Now, I was doing some digging on you. So you were actually born in a smaller town in South Carolina. You're actually born in Hartsville. What was the nature of you guys being over there back in late 76?
Yeah, my mom is from Hartsville. So, her family's still there. We used to go to Hartsville for Easter and Thanksgiving every year. Big, had all my cousins there. So real deep roots in Hartsville, South Carolina. And Hartsville is a split down the middle type of South Carolina town. So, there's definitely some South Carolina. There are definitely some South Carolina fans in Hartsville, just as many as Clemson fans. But like I said, my whole family on my mom's side was diehard Clemson. So I had that exposure at a young age. And, we moved. I don't remember living there. I was born in Hartsville, but then we moved to Atlanta in like 1980. So I was 3 or 4 years old. And, but like I said, we have deep roots there, and I used to go back there twice a year, every year, forever.
And outside of, I'm assuming your time at Clemson and then playing basketball overseas, et cetera, the majority of, your living and life has been done sort of in that Atlanta metropolitan area.
That's right. We are in East Cobb, which is a segment of Marietta. We're 15 miles from the city, but very much in the suburbs. And we've basically been there ever since. Yes, I've bounced around in my career, but we've always called East Cobb home.
Now you're growing up playing sports, you're getting better, middle school, you're probably starting to look a little bit different than everybody, given the fact that you're going to eventually be 6'11". At what point along the way were people like, hey, this Wyman kid, he might be pretty good? Do you remember that moment? And when did it click for you that you might be pretty good?
I don't know if it ever did. So, my dad always had me playing up. So I was always tall, but I was playing with older kids. And he knew, because I was very tall for my age group, he knew that if I didn't play up an age group, then I would, not develop as quickly. So I was always playing up, and I was, I was a guard my whole life until I got to I guess probably high school. So it's because I was playing up and I wasn't as tall compared to the older kids. I was handling the ball, and I was not a center like I ended up being. When I got to high school, I guess I wasn't on a very great high school team. Like, we never qualified for state tournament in Georgia. Back then it was a little more difficult than it is now, but
Right.
I was big, and I guess, even like my junior year, because I was pretty close with the Georgia Tech basketball program. I went down there to talk to their coach, Bobby Crimmins, who was a family friend for a little while. And even then he was like, yeah, you could probably play some college ball, mid-major, Furman, Davidson. And that was like my junior year. So, and
Wow.
I kind of believed him, okay, great. I was kind of excited. That's cool. I could play some college ball. So maybe, I guess, late junior year, senior year, it started looking like I could do something bigger than that. It got kind of fun. I was never a kid that, and I probably, to some degree, this probably hurt me a little bit, but I was never a kid that had real big dreams. I wasn't a dreamer. And that probably hurt me in the long run, just because, I didn't set real, big audacious goals for myself. And I was just kind of a work hard kind of guy, and, let the chips fall where they may. And so if the coach from Georgia Tech said I could play at a mid-major college, okay, that's great. Sounds good. I wasn't disappointed or anything. And then, as things kind of developed and I kept playing, especially in my AAU team, we were pretty good. I think I just got a little more exposure, and some of the bigger schools became interested at the end of the road. So, I don't know it's hard to say when I really felt like this was going to be a bigger piece of my life, or, as we're going to, dedicate to playing, basketball at a major college. Maybe Lawton, to answer your question, this might be the best way to describe it. I did not play baseball my senior year in high school. So maybe that was when I started thinking, okay, maybe I need to get a little more serious about basketball.
You guys arrive on campus. Tom Wyman with us here, 7 freshmen in that group back in 1995. And I can remember getting there to Clemson as well. And to be a freshman that loved basketball, I eventually actually tried out for the team. They had walk-on practice the following season. The only person that made it was, of course, Brian Chester, who had already been a part of the team. But anyway,
Right.
Sour grapes aside. No, I'm just kidding. But I look back and think about what it meant to the guys that were freshmen like me, to know that young guys were influencing the Clemson basketball team early. That was really cool. So you play your high school career. Rick Barnes, I assume, or Larry Shyatt, who kind of brings you in and says, hey, we want you at Clemson. And then ultimately tell us what it was like to kind of know that you guys were really the buzz on campus to a big degree back in 1995.
Yeah, Coach Barnes was so dynamic, and people ask me, why'd I go to Clemson, and the true answer is just because Coach Barnes wanted me more than anybody else. And he walked into math class in high school, and kind of unannounced, just kind of barged in and told the math teacher, he needs her help to get me to come to Clemson in the middle of the whole class, and the other coaches just didn't do that. And so, for me, I was a kid that, again, grew up in a kind of a middle class family. And, I always tell the story that, my parents made me take the trash out to the end of the driveway, and I had to mow the grass and fold the clothes. And so to have a big time coach come in here and say, we're going to drop everything and we want you to come, that was kind of a big deal to me. So, he wanted me more than anybody else. He made it clear. He laid out an opportunity for me to play right away. He kind of laid out who all was coming and who my competition was going to be to get some playing time. So, he also made it clear that we were going to have a big class, and it was going to be his first real class where he had the whole recruiting process while he was at Clemson, and that was exciting. And so we got to campus, and it was fun knowing that we had a big group. And I'll never forget freshman year, that Virginia game at home when Merle, I think that was the game Merle, I think, tore his ACL. And Virginia was pretty good. They had Harold Dean and Curtis Staples, and Harold Dean had 39 that game, and he was just on fire. Well, Merle, late in the game, tears his ACL. Buck fouls out. Well, we finished the game with 5 freshmen on the court, and we win. And we didn't really think about it at the time,
yeah,
because we were all kind of playing. We were all playing a lot. But of course, after the game was over, all you guys were all over us about 5 freshmen, and I guess it was 5 freshmen. It wasn't really a big deal to us. It wasn't really a big deal to us, but I guess it was to everybody else, and so that was kind of fun looking back at it.
Yeah, and just the buzz around campus back then. I mean, football was fun, but it certainly wasn't as good as Clemson football has been recently. And you guys were sort of rocketing out of the gates as freshmen, and there was so much hype and everything. When I was talking with Terrell, I asked him, when he looks back on that, what was that like? And he just couldn't get over, the enthusiasm that was around that basketball program, because let's face it, it's not a place where basketball is often hyped.
Yeah. I think it certainly, the fact that it coincided with a couple of down years in football, I think definitely helped us. And I think a lot of it was Coach Barnes' personality, kind of that he quickly had some success. Even his first year when they beat Duke at Duke, he showed early signs that he's going to turn this thing around, and then it turned around. And it was fun. The Little John was packed. Even the 9:00 Wednesday night game, it was full. And obviously it was kind of the golden era of ACC basketball too. So,
oh man, yeah,
people were coming to watch. That's for sure.
So there you have it, a portion of our interview with Tom Wyman from about 2 years ago. We got a little bit more of that, looking back at his time in Tiger Town. A lot of fun. So we'll make sure we slice that and dice that up for you here in hour number 1. 803-450-0086 text line, phone line. You can always be a part of the program. And again, the Clemson Tiger men's basketball team, the 2022 rendition, will be back on the hardwood February 2nd as they host Florida State at 7 o'clock. The Clemson game against North Carolina, that matchup scheduled for February the 8th has been moved to a 6 o'clock tip-off. The tip-off this coming Wednesday against Florida State at home is a 7 o'clock tip. 803-450-0086 text line and phone line. And again, another one of these fantastic retrospectives for so many of you who haven't heard some of these great interviews. And we've got some good ones, man, during basketball season. We'll re-rack them for you. Eldon Campbell. We had a chance to talk to former Clemson Tiger head men's basketball coach Cliff Ellis not all that long ago. And speaking of Coach Ellis, you know our buddy Tim Beret, who's on the show with us each and every Thursday afternoon. Tim Beret tweeted yesterday after we got off the air that former Clemson coach Cliff Ellis was missing last night's Coastal Carolina matchup due to COVID-19, breaking a streak of 1,346 consecutive games. Coach, he had never missed one. Only Coach K and Jim Boeheim have coached more. So that comes to us from legendary Clemson SID Tim Beret. 803-450-0086. We've also got some updates out of the NFL as one former walk-on, now a star in the NFL, was named to the Pro Bowl, and he's a former Clemson Tiger. We'll tell you who that is if you haven't figured it out already in just a little bit here on Clemson Sports Talk this afternoon. But when we come back, we'll dive further into our interview that we had about 2 years ago, right as COVID-19 was starting to disrupt sports. We sat down with former Clemson Tigers center Tom Wyman. We'll have more on that interview or of that interview for you when we get back. Stay with us here on the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk. Back at it on a Friday afternoon, again, dropping into the retrospective. We had an interview with Tom Wyman, and one of the things I remembered most about Tom and Terrell Mcintyre, who were my age, was the fact that those guys didn't look like freshmen when they arrived on campus, and that's where we'll pick up this conversation with the former Clemson Tigers center, Tom Wyman.
Well, I was fortunate. When I was in high school, I hooked up with a guy in Atlanta who really helped me kind of transform my body starting like my sophomore year in high school. I was very, very thin. And there was a guy who had worked out with some of the athletes at our high school, and he really, really helped me transform. And so I went from my freshman year in high school, I was a 6'7", 175 pounder. And by the time I got to Clemson, I was more like 245, 250.
Yeah.
And and I think that was one of the reasons why Coach Barnes wanted guys like Big O and myself, and even Patrick Garner was a big boy, because we could physically play right away. And it wasn't like they needed to put 20 pounds on us. We could come in and we could play right away and compete physically with, the ACC. And but Big O. So a lot of people don't know this, but Big O and I, we met obviously on the official visit, and Big O, he's the best athlete I've ever been around, period, hands down. He is, you could make a great argument that he could have very easily been an all-pro defensive end in the NFL.
Sure.
But remember when Trevor Price was at Clemson, when he had transferred from, I think he came from Michigan.
Right. Yep.
Well, there was a day where we had to work out in the football weight room because something was going on in our weight room, and Big O and Trevor were down there and just kind of mouthing off, and we just decided, let's just figure this out right now. Who's the better athlete? And I forget what they did, what lifts, but Big O gets up on the vertical jump, and he could touch like 12 feet 4 inches. I mean, something ridiculous. But I remember thinking, from an athletic perspective, here's Trevor ended up being a great defensive end.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Big O in the weight room was just as impressive, if not more impressive, and he was unbelievable. Well, before our freshman year, the coaches put us together. He came and stayed with me in Atlanta for 3 weeks, and all we really did was just kind of lift and train. Well, it was clear that he hadn't done a whole lot of lifting back in his days in high school, even as a football player. All of his athleticism was just natural, and it was amazing, incredible. But he was a guy that was a 6 feet 8, 260 pounds, 270 pounds, could run a 4.6, 36-inch vertical. I mean, he was a freak. And so we got to campus and we were ready. We were ready to go, and it was a lot of fun, kind of getting thrown into the mix quick.
One of those guys that didn't look the part would have been Terrell Mcintyre. He goes on to an illustrious career. He finishes second all-time in scoring. He's a guy at 5'9" that, I think most people look at him now and say, there's no way you played ball in the ACC. When did you recognize that, hey, this little guy from a town you never heard of in North Carolina, Rayford, could actually play the game and play it very well?
It didn't take long. This is a true story. I don't know whether they asked us these questions for like the media guide, but essentially real early in the freshman year, maybe Tim Baray's office, or I don't know if it was our operations guy, Dan, they handed us kind of this survey to fill out. Hey, maybe like a bio on yourself to include in the press guide, perhaps. Well, one of the questions was, who do you think is going to surprise everybody this year? And I wrote down Terrell Mcintyre. This is before our freshman year. He just had something, and he didn't say a word. He just worked. Everybody loved him, and he was just one of these guys that could lead a team without saying a word. And, he was just an impressive guy. And, the rest is history. His freshman year, it didn't take but 3, 4, 5 games for everybody to realize, okay, this guy's a stud and he's going to be our point guard for the next 4 years.
Yeah, y'all are so much fun to watch. But Terrell brought up an interesting point. I mean, when guys rolled into Little John Coliseum, Matt Harpering, whoever, because there wasn't TikTok or social media, you didn't really know them. You didn't like them. You weren't really friends with them. That's a big difference in now versus then, I would assume.
That's right. I'll give you a great example. So after our senior year in high school, the camp that all the high school kids want to get invited to, or one of them is the Nike camp. And so when we go, I got invited late and we went up there and we had our first game. Well, there's this guy on my team who is just doing these dunks that are unbelievable, like to the point where people were just stopping what they were doing and they were coming over to watch him dunk in warm-ups before the game. Well, I asked somebody, I said, well, who is this guy? And they said, that's Vince Carter. You don't know Vince Carter? And so that's a great, he was a top 5 player in the country, but I had never heard of him.
Right.
There was no websites. There was no, there was a guy named Bob Gibbons who used to put out a magazine or a book every year, and it would kind of break down who the best players are, but that was only once a year. So, the Boogie's right. It was so much easier for us to train, to practice. There was just nothing else to do. These kids today are so distracted. They have to balance their sports. If they want to be good, they've got to balance it among all the other stuff that they have to do, which is phones and TikTok and Twitter and all that. So a lot easier for us back then.
Yeah, let's remember you wanted to watch the Braves, and they were very good.
That's right. That's right.
So back with you here on a Friday again. Our interview from a while back with Tom Wyman, former Clemson Tiger Center. Hope you're enjoying this here on a Friday afternoon. 803-450-0086. Coming up in hour number 2, Clemson Tom joins the program. Make sure you keep it locked for that. We'll hit a quick break. We'll bounce back with more right after this. It is a chilly Friday in the Midlands, probably a chilly Friday where you are at this point. Maybe we get some flurries at some point. I don't expect much this weekend by comparison to the last weekend. But again, we've been rolling along with an interview, a wonderful interview that we did with Tom Wyman almost 2 years ago. Here we'll dive back in to that and then put a bow on it on the show that shakes the Southland, our interview with Tom Wyman. Tom, let's talk about the Atlantic Coast Conference basketball tournament game against North Carolina. You guys win that one late on Buckner's dunk. Kind of walk us through that, those moments as a Clemson basketball player.
Yeah. So what I remember about that game was, that was back when there was 9 teams in the ACC. So you had, 8 fan bases that did not want to see North Carolina win. And what I remember about that game was the fans were kind of quiet until about the last 30 seconds. And that's when they realized that, wait a second, Clemson might win this game. And I think it was a late game. I think it was a 9:00 game on that Friday night. So, with the last 30 seconds, all of a sudden, you had 8 fan bases that were just totally cheering for us. And when we got that stop, that gave us basically the last shot to win it. I remember just the rush from the fans. Just, here we go, Clemson can do this. And of course, Buck dunks it, and that was a fantastic memory.
And that sort of sparked what would be a really great run of success for the next couple of seasons. Obviously, a disappointing loss in the NCAA tournament to Georgia, but then you guys come back the following season and get things rolling out of the gate, and the hype and everything, I would say at that point around the program was maybe as big as it's ever been.
Yeah, it was. That next season, I think that was the year we kicked off with Kentucky and we beat them. That was obviously a big win for the program.
And they were the defending national
then,
champs, for some reference for people that may not realize that.
Yeah, and then I think we went off and started 17-1, and we were ranked number 2 behind Kansas when they had Paul Pierce and LaFrance and those guys. And I think we were number 2 for a couple of weeks. And then I think we may have lost to Wake Forest. That, when we were number 2, I think they were number 6. That was a huge game. I remember that was the game where we had the students camping outside, and Coach Barnes was bringing pizza and stuff.
Oh yeah, I was
and then I
was one of them. I got thrown out of that game in the latter stages. Rick Hartzell, I was telling this story, threw me out of the game for just telling him that I thought Tim Duncan got some preferential treatment. Threw me out with about 15. Yeah, that's what I told him.
Well, yeah, it was a good game, and then we ended up having a couple setbacks. We lost at Florida State at home on a buzzer beater, and then we had the weird ACC tournament where we lost to Maryland in the first round, but got it back going for the NCAA tournament and had a good run.
Double overtime against Minnesota. Tony Christie hits a floater to send that game to overtime, and then you guys had a nice lead there in the second overtime, I think maybe 7 points or so. And what's weird about that game is, Tom, and I don't know if you ever go back and watch anything like that, those games, but basketball was just so different when I go back and watch it. Even 20 some odd years ago, it's amazing how different the game is between now and then.
It is. During this last 6 weeks or so, with our downtime, we did break out that game. We were watching the Minnesota game. You can find them all on YouTube now, which is easy. And so I was watching with my kids, and they couldn't believe how, every possession we were trying to get it inside and, working the ball around. And it was just so much, the game was played from inside out.
Yeah.
And, that's, thanks to Steph Curry, that's just not the way it's played anymore. So, we had a good time watching it, and yes, we were up 6 in overtime. And, I tell my wife and kids that this time of year, well, in March every year, I get that sinking feeling because I remember being up 6 in overtime. And of course, initially, when you end up losing a game like that, you think, oh, well, next year we'll be back. Well, we weren't, and or at least we didn't get to the Sweet 16.
Right.
And, we had an opportunity. We were up 6. We were playing a team that was so like us. I mean, they certainly probably had some talent. They had at least 3 NBA players in that team, but they are so like us in how they played. Great defense, big, strong dudes. And we knew, because we had played them in the Thanksgiving tournament in Puerto Rico, Minnesota. We knew what to expect. We played well. We didn't win, but we knew that if we would have beaten them, we were going to crush UCLA. And Minnesota crushed UCLA. And because UCLA was just, all flash. That was the O'Bannons, and and they have for sure had never seen a physical team like Clemson or Minnesota. And Minnesota was probably better than us, but we had a chance to win. And, to be up 6 in overtime and not win, it's just one of those things, as a player, I'll never get over it. I mean, it'll be something that I feel every March. But it's also great memories. And it's also, to know that we, we're one of Clemson's better teams that year. It's fun to know and think about.
Yeah, and that team, you mentioned the Minnesota team. I mean, they ended up being sanctioned for that squad, but Bobby Jackson was unbelievable. Felt like he played in the NBA for 15 years. I mean, he was a heck of a ball player.
He was before that game against us, he was a defensive player. And then after that game, he was a lottery pick. He just went off. I think he had 34 or 36, and then Sam Jacobson had 27. So they played great. I mean, they deserve to win, but to know that you don't necessarily have to be the best team to win the game, and we had a chance to win it. So um, it's fun to watch now, but it certainly brings back some emotions, to say the least.
I can't lie. I love hearing these archived interviews. Can't wait to play a few more of those over the next couple of weeks for you. We'll hit a quick break. We'll come back. One former Tiger now in the Pro Bowl. We'll tell you who, and he was a former walk-on right after this. Clemson Sports Talk, Lawton Swan on Twitter at Clemson Sports. Follow us, man. We got about 25,000. Let's make it 50. Let's go to 100. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd love to reach to 1,000 subscribers over there. I'd love to reach 25,000. But can't wait to get the show back live with you as well. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. So I did enjoy those interviews with Clemson, Tom. I hope you were able to enjoy it as well. But how about the fact that former Clemson Tiger walk-on the football field, Hunter Renfrow, is a Pro Bowler. Now, there's a difference in being a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro. I really don't believe there should be much of a distinction, but there is. But he will play in his first Pro Bowl, representing the representation from MGC Sports announced on social media that Renfro had accepted an invitation to join the AFC All-Star team. He was an alternate after catching 103 passes for 1,038 yards and 9 touchdowns this season. There's no word currently whose spot he's taken. I can tell you Tyreek Hill from the Chiefs, Jamar Chase from the Bengals, who are both battling this weekend, along with Stephon Diggs from the Bills and Keenan Allen from the Chargers, were the original selections for that spot. Either Hill or Chase won't be available since they are playing in the Super Bowl. The winner of that game will be playing in the Super Bowl, so most likely that's the selected spot that Renfro would be filling, but not really sure who that'll be at this point. Most people would believe that it'll be him replacing Tyreek Hill, since the Kansas City Chiefs are favored this weekend. The Pro Bowl is scheduled to be played February 6th at the Raiders' home stadium there in Las Vegas. Now, speaking of the NFL, before we get to hour number 2 and our interview with Clemson Tom, what do you think the matchups are going to be like this weekend? And the thing about this, in a couple of respects, is that it was so good a week ago that you can't help but think you're probably going to get at least one bad ball game here this weekend. I mean, it was so great last week that to imagine that you even get 2 blowouts, playing the odds probably comes to fruition. But I'm hopeful that we get a tight ball game between San Francisco and the Rams. And I'm also hoping that Joe Burrow, along with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, that group of wide-out quarterback combo that they've got, they can cause enough trouble to make this game into a battle, at least into the fourth quarter, a high-scoring game. I don't expect defenses to be very strong, but maybe that will be the case. Several months ago, Joe Burrow came out and said, look, stadiums in the NFL aren't as loud as stadiums in the SEC. He said it gets way louder in the SEC than any of these NFL stadiums. And he's never played at Arrowhead. But even a old quote can come back to haunt you at times. And one would imagine that the Kansas City faithful in Arrowhead Stadium, who are already one of the loudest groups in the NFL, will put that in their hip pocket and do everything they can to bring the heat and disrupt the young quarterback. But what a story he could become, too. What a story Joe Burrow could become from the standpoint of being a guy who led LSU to a national championship just a few short seasons ago. And then in his second year in the NFL to potentially emerge in the Super Bowl, turning around Cincinnati, who had the number 1 overall selection 2 years ago, to bounce them into the Super Bowl potentially. And again, as I have said, I do not think that the way Patrick Mahomes plays is infallible. And in a large way, I think he is due to make some mistakes. And because of some of the things that he does, I think it can cost his team, even at home. Can Joe Burrow, who is a little more, he is a little more fundamental for sure, maybe a lot more fundamental. Can he deliver one of the most significant wins in Cincinnati Bengals history in that matchup on the road at Cincinnati? That matchup set for a 3 o'clock kickoff on CBS on Sunday. Then at 6:30 Sunday night on Fox, San Francisco and the Los Angeles Rams will be facing off. And for the Rams, you start to talk about offseason moves and acquisitions this past year. Honest to goodness, I didn't think it was as big a deal for them to get Matthew Stafford, but he's been nothing short of phenomenal for them this year. 404 completions out of 601 attempts, 4,886 yards, 41 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions. The interceptions high, but 41 touchdowns off of 601 attempts and 404 completions, throwing a touchdown about every 10 completions. Yeah, that's not hurting a lot of people's feelings. Third in the league, I think, in yardage, and maybe second in the league in touchdowns. I would have to double check that, but I think, yes, second in the league in touchdowns with 41. So I give that guy some credit, because his career in Detroit was never really given much of an opportunity to be successful, but now he's in a very, very good spot. By the way, led the league in interceptions along with former Clemson Tiger quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence threw 17 picks this year, offset by just 10 touchdowns. I think based off of what Cincinnati did with Joe Burrow, the Jaguars have to do the same thing for Lawrence. They got to get him some really top-shelf wideouts this year. Hour 2 coming up next.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set! Call me Swanee.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan with you. Clemson Tom set to join the program here in just a little bit. Again, on the heels of a weekend with no Clemson Tiger hoops, we re-racked an old interview with Tom Wyman. If you missed that in hour 1, man, it's good stuff. Good gravy. Is it good? But we're going to push back our interview with Clemson Tom just a little bit in the program. Typically, he's here with us in the top of the hour. He's pretty swamped right now. So if we can get with him, we'll get with him on the back end of the show. 803-450-0086. And again, I haven't heard from many of you. Maybe you hate the old interview, the archived interviews we've been running here a little bit recently, but let us know what you think about it. We would certainly be excited to hear from you on that front. I mean, several of you have reached out to us, obviously, through the years. We get plenty of text messages, but nobody said, oh, I hate it, or no, I love it. I like hearing those old interviews. And quite frankly, during the downtime, I figured why not reset some of that stuff for you. Some news out of Clemson today. The Clemson University Athletic Department announced a women's athletics facilities expansion plan. The Board of Trustees, Finance and Facilities Committee reviewed a $27.5 million expansion plan for new and upgraded lakefront facilities for lacrosse, gymnastics, and rowing. The plans are subject to full Board of Trustee approval on February the 2nd. Construction would commence on Phase 2 approval later in 2022 with a projected completion date of 2024. Graham Neff, Director of Athletics, said, "We are thrilled about this commitment from the Board of Trustees for their approval in the committee today. Clemson Athletics and IPTAY are primed to move forward in providing some of the nation's best facilities for gymnastics and lacrosse. We are equally excited for the benefits this will bring to our vibrant rowing program. The experience of our current student athletes is at the heart of our department, and this commitment makes Clemson immediately competitive on the recruiting trail as well." Think about what I said yesterday here on the program when we talked about Clemson's commitment to women's softball and how important that was in getting that program to where it is in just its second true season under head coach John Rittman. Further looking at some of the information that they put out about this upgrade to the facilities and new facilities for the women's sports and new sports, they say a stunning new project would overlook Lake Hartwell adjacent to the current rowing facility and create a vibrant experience or area for student athletes. Existing trails in the area will be kept intact. They went on to say that the development features a new lacrosse stadium, including bleacher seating and artificial turf, and a 9,000 square foot operations complex, including coaches' offices, locker room, player lounge, and other amenities. The gymnastics team, which will compete in Littlejohn Coliseum, will call a new 21,000 square foot facility home for day-to-day operations and a full practice facility. Like lacrosse, the gymnastics complex will include a practice gym, offices, locker rooms, lounge, and training room. And then there will be a new 10,000 square foot training and recovery facility with designated spaces for sports science, nutrition, sports medicine, and strength and conditioning. That will be constructed to serve the three programs adjacent to their facilities. Again, what an incredible investment Clemson putting into these women's programs. And certainly taking a look at some of the renderings, there is no doubt that this is going to put that aspect of Clemson sports and Clemson's athletic department in a positive light when it comes down to these young female athletes up in Tigertown. 803-450-0086, text line, phone line. Again, be a part of the program anytime, any place, anywhere. Always good to catch up with you to talk a little bit about your Clemson Tigers. And earlier today, we got a chance to hear from Clemson baseball coach Monty Lee as the Clemson Tiger baseball team gets set to kick off the 2022 campaign. Monty Lee, of course, has Will Taylor, who was injured during football season, with the baseball program. And he said that Taylor's about 2 weeks away from beginning his sprint program. And after that, Will Taylor will begin hitting. So he's progressing through his rehab, doing pretty well. No real timetable, quote unquote, on his return, but they are attempting to work him in. And again, that's the news out of Tigertown as far as Will Taylor goes. And I know that is a bit of a carryover topic for many of you when it comes down to the college football campaign, given the fact that Taylor this past season as a freshman really had some moments where his shiftiness and spark reminded me an awful lot of former Clemson Tiger wide receiver Hunter Renfrow. So I think that what type of impact this young man can have ahead of the college baseball season at this point is certainly unknown because of his injury. But it does feel like you can rest assured that this Clemson Tiger team is excited to have that guy have the opportunity to play. Well, certainly Monty Lee is excited about the opportunity. And Dabo Swinney loved what he saw from him a year ago or this past fall on the gridiron. Nonetheless, it's almost baseball season. And Coach Monty Lee was asked about some shirts that Clemson had made up that say toughness over talent.
Well, I think toughness has to show up every day. I mean, your ability to handle adversity and bounce back from it. to step up every single day and give everything you got. And when things aren't going well, you got to be able to flush it and move on to the next rep or the next practice or the next game. And that's where true mental toughness lies. And look, we know the level of competition that we're playing in league play and even in our non-conference play. We're playing high-quality baseball teams where toughness has got to show up. And competing every pitch of every ball game is the only sign that we have on our door. And guys got to be tough. They got to be able to bring that type of focus and energy level every single day. So for us, the guys that are going to play for us are the ones that can show that toughness and step up to the challenge every single day and compete every pitch.
Coach Monty Lee, again, previewing the 2022 Clemson Tiger baseball team. He was also asked about this team and their urgency coming into this season, sort of how these guys feel heading into the 2022 year.
Well, I think this year has been phenomenal. The fall went very, very well since we came back. Probably the first message I would say that was sent to me was one where it wasn't even told to me. January 3rd was the first opportunity that the guys could come back and work out on their own. No coaches were involved. It was all player-led. And every player on the roster was here on January 3rd. We didn't start class until January 12th. So our guys literally for 9 days or however many days it was, our guys were working out in the weight room, doing sprint work, hitting on their own, throwing on their own. It was player-led. And it it shows the type of leadership that we have on the team with some of the older guys and just how much it meant to them to get everybody back here and working together as we get ready for the season.
Coach Lee was also asking about the guys being accountable and responsible for their space. Local high school, River Bluff, they've got a thing called Leave No Trace. Clemson football, the Clemson football team is notoriously known for how they leave spaces, in locker rooms after they leave them. Here's Monty Lee talking about that same mindset that is a part of what this Clemson Tiger baseball team wants to do this year as well.
Well, it's a big deal. I mean, we've spent a lot of time trying to develop leadership within our program. Talking about last year, and that's one of the things that we needed. We needed more players leading the program. You're not going to have great leadership if you don't police the locker room and you don't hold each other accountable. And that shows up when it comes to setting up the field and breaking the field down, keeping the dugouts clean, keeping the player lounge clean, the locker room clean. Quite honestly, you got to be able to have those uncomfortable conversations with your teammates for the guys that aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So, on the back of that shirt, it says respect the game. Well, you can't respect the game if you don't respect everything about it. And that comes with going to class every day, being on time, respecting the facility, respecting the uniform, respecting the program, respecting how we play the game, how we practice, all of those things. So it's just, just a whole encompassing thing that we're just trying to do, and the guys are leading it. My goal, and told them this first team practice, my goal is not to have a lot of team meetings. We had a lot of team meetings last year. If I'm having a lot of team meetings, that means that I'm trying to lead the team and I'm trying to get the guys going in the right direction because I see that it's not going in the right direction. So we're just trying to get the guys to lead the program, and they know the expectations. I'm spending more time meeting with the leadership council. The leadership council was voted on by the players, not by me. I didn't make the group. They voted for the group. So, that group is the group of guys that I spend time talking to. If there's any issues that need to be brought up, they bring it up to me. I give them my advice, and then I let them lead from there. So that's probably, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a change. We've done that for all 7 years that I've been here, but I think this group has taken it more seriously.
Monty Lee was also asked to update everybody on some other guys and other names that would certainly be taking a leadership role that may not be a part of that leadership council.
Oh, well, I mean, and it's more than just the leadership council, but Mac Anglin is one of them. Jeffrey Gilbert is another one that was voted by his peers, and Jackson Lindley. Those guys received the most votes on the pitching staff, so they're the leadership council of the pitchers, and then the position guys, Chad Ferry, Blake Wright, and Briar Hawkins. Those were the three guys that were voted upon by their teammates. So that's the six, but it's not just those six. There's several other guys that have leadership qualities and that are very, very well respected within the group. But those guys are also the oldest, of the group. So they tend to command the most respect from a leadership standpoint because they have the most stripes on their sleeve, so to speak.
Lee was also asked about what he thought the advantages were to having sort of a player-led team in 2022.
Well, it is pretty simple. Quite honestly, just watch us practice. Watch us practice and watch us play. And you'll be able to see those types of things. You'll be able to see that, wherever our players are, if they're doing the things they're supposed to be doing, they're locked in on what's going on every single rep. It's just about competing every pitch. And that means if I'm in the dugout, I should be watching the game pitch by pitch, being a student of the game in the dugout. I'm a big believer in enthusiasm and energy in the dugout, but I think sometimes it becomes more about that than it does about paying attention to the game and bringing the right type of energy in the dugout towards the guys on the field. So it's about watching a game and learning in the dugout what's going on, talking baseball in the dugout while the game is going on. It's about when you show up on time, you get your early work in. The position guys set the standard, what time they're supposed to be here every day and be in the batting cages before practice. I mean, just look behind you. This is all optional batting practice. Nobody's made them be out here. Nobody organized this. It's basically, guys, the field's open starting at 1:30 if you want to hit. And if you want to show up and hit. Well, they're all here. So that's what it means. It's basically, we can talk the talk all we want, but they have to walk the walk. Leadership takes action. It's like anything else. There's no manual on being a leader. It takes action. So that's what they're doing. They're taking leadership and action and showing up on time, working hard, checking in every day, stepping up every day, and getting better. And that's leadership in a nutshell to me. It's taking action to get a little bit better every single day and pushing others to get a little bit better every day.
Again, that was Clemson baseball coach Monty Lee. And I like the thought process of what he's trying to do. Clemson's football team's got that accountability piece put into it. It never hurts for players to be a little bit more responsible, not just for their own actions on the field, but also off the field. And I think that's what he's trying to generate is a self-sufficient, self-supported baseball program where these players are lifting themselves up and supporting each other and helping each other and working through all of the nuances of being a team without having to be just basically the old pray and spray model where as a leader, you're up front and hoping that a portion of your group takes to heart the things you're saying. This presents it in a completely different way. And I think there's a lot of value in that for sure. The other thing too, I think this year is a pivotal year for Monty Lee because of the pressure that Clemson Tiger fans are going to put on him. There is not a hotter seat in Tiger Town, and that includes Brad Brownell's. Now, look, we can argue whose seat should be hotter, but because of the expectations that fans have held Clemson Tiger baseball to for so long, Monty Lee's, the expectations that fans, especially fans who support wholeheartedly Clemson Tiger baseball have for that program are much greater than the basketball program. I have said for years, if Clemson Tiger fans, if you told Clemson Tiger baseball fans, maybe most of the fans, that they could be successful in football and baseball by getting rid of the basketball program, you would have just heard Little John Coliseum's detonation take place in the background. I mean, that's how quickly people would erase the basketball team. They would never erase the baseball team. If you said, oh, look, if you get rid of the baseball program, you'll win in football and basketball every year, people would say, I don't know that we want to give that up. And that's the thing. There is much more support or belief in that baseball program and what it should be than the basketball program. If most people felt the way that I do about Clemson basketball, I can assure you Brad Brownell would not be there. Look no further than what happened at Louisville with Chris Mack this week. Right? Basketball is serious business at Louisville. Final question for you off of that conversation with Monty Lee. More annoying, the jugs machine during football or the ping of the baseball bats in the background? I got to tell you, that the baseball bats in the background, the jugs machine makes a ruckus. The baseball stuff was annoying. I couldn't wait for that to end. Just saying. Some of you can't wait for pitchers and catchers or spitters and scratchers or whatever you want to call it. Some of you can't wait for them to get out there on the mound and get down and get to business as the Tiger baseball team will open things up with a 3-game homestand against Indiana, February the 18th at 4 p.m. on a Friday. Clemson will play Indiana on a Saturday at 3 p.m., February 19th. Then Sunday the 20th at 1 o'clock. Clemson will then face the College of Charleston in Tigertown on February 22nd before a second 3-game series against Hartford in Clemson. Their first road matchup will take place in Columbia March the 4th at 7 o'clock against the Gamecocks, and then they'll play in a neutral site matchup in Columbia as well over at Segra Park at 4 o'clock on March 5th before wrapping up their 3-game series with the Gamecocks Sunday, March 6th at 3 o'clock back up at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. Be a part of the program anytime, any place, and anywhere. Love when the text come rolling in. Oh, when the text come rolling in. Oh, when the text come rolling in. Oh, how you want to get that number. It's 803-450-0086. What's happening? All right, we got a break coming up. When we come back, I complained, and some of you are going, you always complain, Swanee. No, I don't. Would you just, I'm sick of you guys saying that. Pun intended. Truth is, I complained about a topic earlier this week that drives me insane. I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before. I can't keep the day straight anymore. But we have some news on the Atlantic Coast Conference football schedule for you when we get back. Stay with us. A Friday afternoon, Clemson Sports Talk, Lawton Swan with you. So earlier in the week, I was being critical of the Atlantic Coast Conference and the fact that we don't have a schedule yet. I've been critical of this league for years. I don't have any idea how the SEC can manage to get their schedule together faster every single year. But guess what, folks? We are only 3 days away from the release. January 31st. Mark your calendars, people. It'll be released at 7 p.m. on the ACC network. Why does this take so long? Jordan Cornett will host a 2-hour special along with former Clemson Tiger Eric McLean, EJ Manuel, and Mark Richt this coming Monday as they reveal each team's full 2022 schedule along with key matchups. Coaches from across the conference will join live during the 2-hour show between the 8 and 9 o'clock hour. Like, I get it. You want to have a spectacle. I get it. You want to put it on display. But it just feels like this should have been put out so long ago. When did the SEC's 2022 schedule come out? I mean, that's a great question because it's been out. Let's see. The 2022 SEC schedule by team. It came out September 22nd. That's like 4 months ago. 128 days ago. The SEC put out their schedule. I mean, what are we waiting for? I mean, I get it. There's not a lot going on when you talk about college football at this point. But is that the reason for the wait? Like, do you feel like, you got like a news dump on a Friday evening? Do you feel like the scheduling is kind of a news dump during the year, but if you put it out in the middle of a sort of a dead period, you're going to get some credibility across the country and having people talk about it? Breaking news, because Miami and Florida State aren't what they once were, there's not really a game on the schedule in this league that too many people nationally are going to be excited about. Now, maybe, just maybe, the Clemson North Carolina State game is one that some people might consider a big matchup, given the fact that there's a chance, and I think it's still a slim one, but a chance that the Wolfpack end up ranked inside the top 10 to open the season, and Clemson could be right there as well. And if you're the power brokers of the ACC, let me ask you this. How do you set it up? Don't you put Clemson and NC State as like the final game of the year in the Atlantic Division for those two teams? I mean, I understand Wake Forest made it to the ACC championship this past year. But do you ride the number and just hope that you get lucky that these two teams, Clemson and NC State, both play very well this year and maybe both hold the line or toe the line or whatever the correct terminology might be? I mean, one way to look at it too, if you truly believe that these two teams might be top 10 programs this year, do you separate them and have their game? Well, not separate. That's not the right word. Do you allow them to play early enough in the season so that that game is separated from the back end of the year so that the loser could potentially recover, and then you worm your way into a two-bid league? You become a team like, or you become a conference like the SEC, where you get two teams in. I mean, if Clemson and NC State, obviously the Tigers are opening up on the road against Georgia Tech and Atlanta in that Chick-fil-A kickoff. We know that. But if you put Clemson and NC State week 2 and allow both of those teams plenty of time to recover and maybe make a run, what if one of those two teams wins out the rest of the way? And you've got a team riding, a 10-game winning streak. If you were in the top 10 at the beginning of the year, let's just say that the way too early rankings of ESPN actually hold. And let's just pretend that Clemson opens at 11 and NC State opens at number 8. If the Tigers were to beat the Wolfpack at home in the second game of the season, and then NC State were to win out the rest of the way, first you must consider how far would they drop if they got beaten a close game by Clemson. If Clemson at that time's 11 or 10 and they're still 8 or 7, one would imagine they might drop, maybe at worst to 12? And then if they were to run the table the rest of the way, I mean, wouldn't it be tough to keep them out of the college football playoff? I mean, I'm not telling you the ACC is so strong that the resume is the thing, but with anything, this is why it's where you start, even with the college football playoff committee. Where you start has a huge impact on what opportunities lie ahead of you with one small blemish. If you start at 25 and lose in the second week of the season, climbing into the top of the college football playoff rankings is very difficult, much more difficult than if you start at 8, where the Wolfpack currently are in ESPN's way too early rankings. So far be it from me to say that it's a certainty that the ACC would get 2 teams, and far be it from anybody to believe that it would even happen. But if Clemson and NC State play early rather than late, maybe those 2 teams could have an extended streak and possibly at least sniff getting 2 teams in to the college football playoff. We'll see, though. We'll find out what the schedule looks like coming up on Monday at 7 o'clock on the ACC network. Stay with us. Back at it on a Friday afternoon and a little later than usual, but Clemson Tom joins the program today. Tom, CT, hope you're doing well, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm out here on my new golf cart, about to hit up some golf practice with Xander, and we're heading to Jacksonville Beach this weekend. We got a tournament, so I'm moving and shaking, baby.
Listen, we got snow here last weekend. They're calling for some possible little flurries here today. I saw up north they're thinking about possibly getting, or they're not thinking about it, they might be getting 24 inches of snow. I mean, Tom, how would you survive in that type of extreme weather?
I'd be fine. It's not my first rodeo when it comes to getting snow or anything. I do feel bad for the state of Florida because some of these cats, well, a good majority of these guys down here can't drive anyway. So if you put a little bit of snow, I'm sure the state would probably shut down. We wouldn't know what to do. But I would be okay, man. The country boy can't survive. You know that song.
I do know that song. Matter of fact, I'm a boy from the country myself. Now, a little Barnwell, South Carolina shout out there. Clemson Tom hanging out with us here today. So, Tom, I can't remember this. And now that I say that, where did you grow up? I mean, where do you consider home?
I consider home Clemson. That is my home. People say I'm from Greenwood, but I grew up in South Florida, a little bit of everywhere. But yeah, at heart, I'm a Tiger. At heart, I'm a Tiger.
So South Florida.
That's probably where I would call if you push came to shove. But when I get buried, I'm going to be cremated in Clemson. So sprinkle my ashes on the field. It's already in the will.
Clemson Tom with us on a Friday afternoon, a little later in the show than usual. Tom, I know that your bread isn't buttered by Clemson Tiger basketball, but they went up to Durham this past week, had a heck of a fight with the Blue Devils, got beat by 2, but maybe most notably only shooting 1 free throw. Your thoughts on Clemson?
It's crazy, right? Yeah, Duke is always going to get the calls, man. Like, it's to the point where you almost want to do an investigation into the referees. So you're trying to tell me Duke went the whole game and hardly fouled us, only fouled us once or something like that? Like, come on, man. Maybe twice? It's impossible. But at Duke in North Carolina, they get all the calls. There's Tobacco Road. It's, it is what it is, man. But you got to know that going into it. It's like playing at Notre Dame. You know Notre Dame's going to get the calls. You know what's going to happen. So you got to go there and beat them.
Clemson Tom is on Twitter at Clemson Tom. Make sure you go follow him right now to have a good time riding the ride. So, Tom, I also saw that you had some difficulties this week at a local restaurant, unable to get a seat. I can tell you this. I've had that issue before pre-pandemic. And you know what? I think you did the right thing. You got up, you just left politely, and I'll tell you why. Because the people who are there working probably don't deserve to be fussed at, given the fact that they've showed up, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to cause. And I took my regional manager out, and he was basically, he was upset. And I was trying to treat him to lunch. And we ended up just, getting something else local. But, yeah, I mean, it wasn't like we're the only people in there. I mean, it was somewhat busy lunchtime at a pretty decent, Italian restaurants, over by Bay Hill. So they were kind of packed on a Thursday. But, I mean, it was kind of frustrating. Like, at least they acknowledged us enough to sit us down. And I sat down, and him and I are kind of answering emails, going back and forth. And I'm like, man, we've been here like 15 minutes, man. And some guy goes, let me get you some waters. So I'm like, all right, cool, finally. The guy comes, drops off the waters, doesn't even stop. He just like set down the waters in stride and like kept walking. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And like at this point, I already know what we want to eat. Like, take my order, bro. But and my boss looked at me, he's like, let's just go somewhere else. I was like, all right, man, no worries. We got up left. I don't even think they noticed we left.
Yeah, it is one of those moments where when you feel that happening, the best thing to do is just go ahead and prepare to place your order when they do come to take the drink orders, right? I mean, you just gotta.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, he didn't even ask us anything. He's like, "Hey, I'm coming back with your waters." And in my head, I'm like, "Okay, maybe he got busy, something." But no, he like sat down the waters and he never stopped walking. He like set them down in stride and kept moving.
Had he said drive by as he set them down, would you have stayed?
If he'd have done what?
If he would have said drive by,
maybe, you know what? Maybe put a little humor on it. I might have, just done off some waters. And if he would have been like, "Hey, hey, here's your waters. So sorry, I'll be right back," I would have stayed. So
Clemson.
It was what it was. But the fact that we had, other waiters we saw just like standing around kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But last time I was there, I had immaculate service. So maybe we're having a bad day. You're allowed to have a bad day.
I'll tell you a guy that doesn't have many bad days, if any. Hunter Renfrow, Tom. He's going to be in his first Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I know. He should be. Hunter Renfrow one time went to McDonald's, ordered a Whopper, and they delivered it to him at Wendy's. It's crazy. that guy does no wrong. Legitimately can do no wrong.
You should have had him at your dinner table the other night.
Do what now?
You should have had Hunter Renfrow with you at dinner. You wouldn't have had a problem at the restaurant.
Oh, no. You kidding me? He would have took the order. He would have cooked it for me. It would have been out in 2 minutes. If I would have took Hunter Renfrow with me, I would have had to order. We would have walked in, sat down. Hunter would have pulled like an apron out of his pocket, took it out like a magic show, and there would have been my, lasagna or whatever we would have ordered. And like, "Here you go. It's fresh. I just made it myself. The cheese is imported from Italy." I'm like, "Thanks, Hunter. I can always count on you." Hunter Renfro for president. Let's get it going.
Every Friday afternoon, a little later this week than normal, Clemson Tom joins us. Tom, we got about a minute left with you. Then we're going to hit a break, and we'll come back and do one final segment before I get you out of here. But first and foremost, as you kind of see the news developing at Clemson in that quarterback room, obviously Cade Klubnik coming in, Hunter Johnson making his way, and now Bo Nix's younger brother, not a big name recruit by any means, going to be a preferred walk-on. But do you get the feeling that Clemson's thinking, maybe we got to hedge our bets a little bit on what this locker room at quarterback looks like by the fall?
Well, I mean, you were going to do that anyways, even if he turned out to be the second coming of Trevor Lawrence. We needed to do something. But, we definitely need a little bit more depth in that quarterback room, that's for sure.
We'll hit a quick break and come back with more from Clemson Tom on a Friday afternoon on Clemson Sports Talk on Fox Sports Radio 1400 and on the iHeart Radio app.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately? And what have you done always are the same. We win.
Back at it on a Friday afternoon, final segment. Clemson Tom still with us. He's at the clubhouse, though, down there in Florida, where it's sunny and funny. Up here in the state of South Carolina, it's getting chilly, Tom. How are those guys treating you there at the clubhouse? I mean, do you guys get the red carpet there with my man Xander in the house?
Oh, yeah. It's when he walks in there, 100%. And so I got to shout out the guys here at Stony Brook East in Orlando. They're listening in now since we just cut a break. But no, it is not sunny here. It is overcast in the 50s, and the wind's blowing about 15 miles an hour. About to get some work in.
That's rough weather for Florida folks. I'm not sure if y'all can handle that. You guys may need to turn back and go home.
Nah, man. These colors don't run. We're champions. Just because God decided to give us a cold day with a little bit of wind, you think I'm going to go inside? No. I'm going to go out here and brave these conditions. That's what winners do.
Speaking of champions, we'll find out who the AFC and the NFC champions are coming up this weekend, Tom. It'll all begin at 3 o'clock on Sunday as the Bengals will take on the Kansas City Chiefs on the road, Arrowhead Stadium. You got to say this at least for this game, right? It's fortunate for the Bengals that this isn't a night game.
Yeah, probably 100%. I've actually, fun fact, I used to sell programs in the Kansas City Chiefs games freshman year of college to earn some money. And that place is a college football atmosphere. They rock and roll in there. I mean, it gets loud. I don't like Patrick Mahomes' brother, Jackson Mahomes.
Yeah, I noticed. I
So
saw your post on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge Bengals fan. That guy's just a jerk, dumping water on people and dancing in his underwear and stuff, just acting like a buffoon. So yeah, I'm going to be a big Bengals fan this weekend. And we got some Tigers on the team too, so yeah.
Plus, you got T. Higgins there for sure. And look, is it hard? Because Tim Burray was on the show yesterday, legendary Clemson SID, and he said it's kind of hard to root for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, given what happened against Clemson a couple of years ago in the national championship, snapping the Tigers' 29-game winning streak and keeping them from winning back-to-back titles. I mean, do you have a tough time rooting for Joe Burrow?
Not really. You know, when you do it, you're like, oh, that's the guy that beat us. But, man, it wasn't like they beat us on, like, a cheat call or, you know, some garbageness. You know what I mean? I mean, they took it to us. They just flat out beat us. So, you know, if you flat out beat me, I'm going to give you some respect. It does feel weird to be like, yeah, man, Joe Burrow this weekend. But you know what? I'm T. Higgins this weekend. That's how we're looking. So, and they're Tigers. So, at the end of the day, I'm cheering for T. Higgins. And I'm cheering for the Tigers. Ain't much can go wrong in that situation. And we're cheering against Kansas City. So it's almost like a Florida State versus Clemson kind of a thing. That's how I'm going to look at it.
Clemson Tom with us here on a Friday afternoon, 803-450-0086, text line, phone line. All right, Tom, the other matchup, of course, in the NFC, you've got San Francisco taking on the Los Angeles Rams. Your thoughts on that game?
Yep. Oh, man, that's going to be a fun one to watch. I do think the Rams get it done. In all honesty, it's probably going to be the Rams against the Chiefs. I think that's going to be a phenomenal matchup. But I think the Rams are going to take it to San Francisco. I do like Garoppolo. I like the way he plays. They got a good squad out there. But the way Los Angeles is just – I mean, they built a team. I mean, they went out, they got some free agencies, made some good trades, did it really well in the draft. They've had a good coach there for a while. It's tough to not think they're going to pull it out. And they're probably going to end up winning the whole daggum thing. They're just locked and loaded everywhere. And to see Matt Stafford go out there and beat Tampa Bay last week, which was heartbreaking for me, but this is the way he did it, man. Stood in the pocket. You know, it's the year of the dogs, apparently. So if he wins the Super Bowl, then, you know, his dogs won the national championship. If he wins the Super Bowl, he's probably having the best year ever. But, yeah, I got to go Rams.
Tom, listen, buddy, always great catching up with you. Have a great weekend, and tell Xander, hit him straight.
It's going to be 30-mile-an-hour winds tomorrow, so I don't know how straight we can do it, but we'll try.
Maybe the wind will be blowing in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
All right, buddy, be good. All right, man, take care. Clemson Tom here on a Friday afternoon. All right, we got a couple of quick things to get to. First off, HD, listen to the show in Charlotte. He says, Swanee, I completely agree with you regarding Mahomes. He is an incredibly talented running quarterback with a great arm, and many praise his unconventional throwing style, but at some point it will lead to a critical error. I still believe in fundamentals. I'm with you, HD. No doubt about it. I just think that, look, he gets away with a lot. He's got a lot of talent around him. As I said the other day, I think if you surround him with a different cast, I don't think it works out all that well for him, quite frankly. I think he benefits from some of the skill position players he's got. And he took advantage of it to the tune of, $465 million. Also, some news out of the upstate today as the Clemson Tigers picked up another commitment, this time the brother of former Clemson Tiger defensive lineman Shaq Lawson, 3-star defensive lineman Jaheim Lawson commits to the Clemson Tigers today. So Clemson with another pickup, Jaheim Lawson, the third 3-star recruit to land in Tiger Town over the past week. So Clemson putting some final little buttons on the board, if you will, as it pertains to the 2022 recruiting class. Again, enjoy the weekend in the NFL, listen, I'm not a big betting guy. I think Cincinnati's going to make that game more interesting than people expect in Kansas City. I still think the Chiefs, however, do win it. Disappointing for me, given the fact that I always like rooting for the underdogs. And then in the West Coast, I think the Rams are too talented. And so I'll take the Los Angeles Rams. I'll have the Rams and the Chiefs playing for all the marbles in the NFL. We'll talk to you next week. Until then, as always, y'all take care now and go Tigers.